Hey there, my name is Elizabeth Eleanor Makepeace, and I have been challenged to do a YouTube for 365 days to share the story of my spiritual journey. I woke up spiritually about 26, 27 years ago now, and have had some pretty wild experiences. And so someone was just sharing with me that their mentor had 365 days where they went on every single day for doing YouTube. And that's how they started. And was like, you need to share your story. So I've been challenged to do the same. I'm going to do my best to come on here and share my journey as I go along. Uh, have I ever done anything other than brush my teeth and go for a shower? Even not a shower every single day, right? But brushing my teeth, I generally do. So I'm going to do my best to see if I can be committed and focused for 365 days and sit here and share my story, because I'm aware that there's a lot of people that are spiritually waking up at the moment, and that it's really important to be there for someone that's been on the journey for so long, um, to share some of the wisdom and the tips and some of the things that I went through, to know that it's okay, right? That it's not you going crazy, that there's haywire that can happen and crazy things that can happen, and it's all part of the journey, right? For a long time on, way back when, I've been on this journey for a long time, and I get to see, or I've seen so many things where the whole spiritual development and personal development industry has evolved within itself. And so I remember when everything was rainbows and unicorns, right? And don't look at the dark, don't look at your shadow self, right? And then there was that process of look at your shadow and do nothing else, right? And then you get stuck in the cesspit. So I want to share my journey with you to show you that it's a little bit of both. It's looking at your light and being able to process your darkness and clear that shadow aspect, the things that our soul came in to correct, so that you have more capacity to hold what your soul's destiny and path is all about, right? Because we are multidimensional, and we're here in this physical body to clear the things out of the way that is stopping us or limiting us from really reaching our highest capacity and being multidimensional and being aware of that multidimensional aspect of ourselves. So let's stop there and go back to where it all started, because my journey at the very start um, was pretty interesting because, well, to start with, when I was younger, my mum said when I was really young that she knew there was something different about me. She said you used to shine brightly in the cot, and she said you'd sit there and smile and just take everything in. So I was born. I wasn't supposed to be here. My brother Bradley was a stillborn. And in those days, so I was born in 1971, I'm 53. In those days, when someone has a stillborn, it's not like it is today. So back then, there was no emotional support. My mum never got to see the baby. Basically, Bradley was whisked out, and their way of healing was go and have another baby. So I'm here because Bradley died, and which was a really challenging way of growing up, because I was seen as special, because not only was I born alive and crying, but I was a girl after three boys. And so growing up special was a burden for me, because I was taking on a lot of my mum's emotional support as the youngest, as the girl. And also because I had this special thing, mum sort of held me back from experiencing life because she was so scared of life itself. I do think that my mum was actually um, I do think that mum may, in these days, could be diagnosed with, being on the spectrum. Um, she has now got dementia and living in a nursing home bedbound, but that's another story altogether. So when I was growing up, I'm 7 years younger than my brothers, so I don't even remember one of my brothers living at my house. But my dad was on a kidney machine and very sick, and so was always sick. I don't remember him ever being well. And one of the things that I do remember was that I always had this feeling, this knowing that he was going to die. And when I was young, and I used to lay with him while he was on the machine and cry and say, I don't want you to die. And of course, he was, being the dad, he was like, I'm not going to die on you, like, it's okay, blah, blah, blah. Well, when I was 15 in year 10 at high school, he got a kidney all of a sudden. He was the longest, I live in Australia, and he was the longest kidney or dialysis patient in New South Wales at the time. And he got a kidney and it didn't work, and they took it out within a couple of weeks. And he was at home because they didn't have enough beds. And so he was at home after two major operations. And one morning, and this is actually really important, this part. One morning, I went to school and didn't, he wasn't awake yet. Now, I want to just share a little bit of a previous thing that relates to this. What happened was my dad was, when I was in primary school, my dad and I were like this, right? Mum, now I understand, mum had to work all the time because dad was sick, right? But when I was growing up, I just knew mum was never around. So my dad was the one that looked after me, taught me things, told me about my first period, got a piece of paper out and did a diagram of the uterus and all that sort of stuff. I didn't really know mum at all. All I know about mum is that she'd come home angry and yelling and screaming at all of us. Well, me and my dad. And anyway, dad and I were like this. So one day I was really shitty with my dad in primary school, and I decided he drove me to school and we had a fight, and I got out of the car and I slammed the car door and I didn't say goodbye. So I'm walking down to school and I'm halfway down. There was a big, long cement path all the way down. There was a big oval before you got to the actual buildings. And I'm halfway down. I'm like, I didn't say goodbye to my dad, And so I turn around and he's gone. Well, we lived somewhere where that I could have gone, and I ran home, which was, it was still half an hour or something it took me, but I went home and he let me have the day off, right? I didn't say goodbye to you, right? Anyway, fast forward to year 10, the morning of his passing, I went to school without saying goodbye to him because he was already, he was still asleep, and he passed while I was at school. And I'm in science. I remember very vividly because I was in science class and I was in one of the first rows and the teacher was sitting at the back of the class, actually he was standing, and he was discussing with us what was on the board. And the year advisor came in, didn't even look at me. She walked past me and went and started talking to Mr. Adrian, his name was. And I just started packing my bag. I just knew. So when she came to me, she said, oh, you're packing your bag. Yeah, you actually need to. That's a really good idea. We need to have a discussion. Come with me. So we walked outside. She led me out and closed the door behind me. And as she turned around, I said, he's dead, isn't he? And she was like totally confused. I was confused. How did I know, right? At that stage, I was more dealing with my dad, and apparently I screamed, I walked into the house. They came and picked me up. I don't even remember who it was. came and picked me up, and it was like a, FBI TV series. There was neighbors and police and ambulance and family and people crying. My dad, dead in the back room. And that was a really critical point in my life because, one, I was really struggling to deal with the fact that my dad, I'm just going to put my charger in just in case, my dad, who was my life at the time, because I didn't have many friends, because mum wouldn't let me do anything in my life. So I never went to any social gatherings outside of school. I found out later my name's Elizabeth, and everyone used to call me Liz. And I found out later that they'd ring me and say, "Is Liz there?" And mum would say, "There's no such person that lives here," and hang up. And I found out later that she did that because my name's Elizabeth, not Liz. So just like everyone else has had their trauma, I grew up with a lot of trauma in my life through the process. But that whole thing of not saying goodbye to my dad the day that he died, and linking it with what had happened when I was in primary school, these are the moments that happen for a reason. Your soul comes down onto this planet to correct things, like situations, so that you can contain and hold more light, because we are creative spiritual beings. We have the ability to create whatever we want, and our soul comes down into an environment that will give us everything we need so that we can experience ourselves as light. We can experience ourselves as that higher being. So it's not roses and unicorns and rainbows, right? We come down into the chaos. We come down into the trauma. We come down into the darkness so that we can make a different decision this time around, because lifetime after lifetime, the decisions that we make warrant, or that's not the right word, our behaviors and our vibration. So we want to be able to clear the vibrations that are holding us back, the patterns that are holding us back from containing more and more light and raising our vibration through the process, right? So what does Elizabeth do at 15 years old when the only person that she knew that absolutely loved her unconditionally passes away? She just loses the plot, right? So my mum tells me, if she was being able to talk now, she would still say exactly the same thing. One of the things that she used to say was Elizabeth was an absolute angel for the first 15 years of her life, and then a switch went on. And that switch was my dad dying. So what happened was I completely lost it. I actually left my body. I don't even remember what happened between, I was going to go on to year 11 and 12, which is, at the time was an option. Now it's something that everyone seems to do. I left in year 10 because I was going to go on to year 11 and 12, because Dad and I had this thing that I was going to be a nurse, right? So that I could look after him. And so I left in year 10, and Mum didn't know what to do with me because I was grieving. She was grieving. She lost a husband, and she'd lost her son, when I was born, she had been in psychiatric wards while she was pregnant with me, because she was still grieving this child that no one had given her any support to grieve, right? In those days, I don't even think it was available, right? Not like it is now. I think they just put you on tablets. So she had a lot of grief in her and didn't know how to deal with my grief. So what she did was she actually put me into TAFE, and I did a secretarial course. And I remember distinctly, I think I was about halfway through that course, where I remember coming into my body and looking at this typewriter, because it was a proper typewriter back then. looking down at this typewriter and going, what am I doing here? Like, I don't want to be a secretary. Really just coming back into my body. And I was already smoking, so I was smoking pot, introduced to pot at 12 years old. But by that time, when my dad left, I just started smoking, and I smoked a lot, and introduced people from TAFE to smoking. In fact, one of my best friends at TAFE, I didn't want to talk to anyone while I was there, but she, coerced me to be her friend, was the daughter of a minister, and I introduced her to smoking as well, right? We had some crazy experiences together and heaps of fun. But what happened for me was that I then met up with a guy that I went to school with, that was really interested in me at school, but I didn't have bar of that because I wasn't allowed. And we got together just as friends to start with, but that's a huge story, and maybe I'll share on another video. Mum trying to stop us getting together. But we went on a massive bender for like 10 years. I smoked pot, and so did he. And we, got into other drugs as well. But he, in the process, turned into an alcoholic. And so 10 years of numbing myself and trying to work out who I was while I was in an emotionally abusive relationship with someone that, what he really wanted was he wanted someone to be his mum, because he didn't really have a really beautiful relationship. They had a lot of trauma in their life, and I needed someone to be my dad. So, two dramatically broken children getting together and trying to work out life together, and it didn't work very well. So for 10 years, we did our best, and best wasn't good enough. And at the end of those 10 years, I had two children right at the end, and there's nothing like having to look after something that comes out of your own womb, to wake you up and go, there's more to life than what you're experiencing. And so I really started going, man, I need to get my shit together. I don't want my children growing up in this type of environment. Unfortunately, he was unable to change or didn't want to. And so I had to leave. And at the time I was in that, space. I was still very young. So I was 23 when I had my daughter. And I want you to understand this. Anyone that's going to follow this journey with me, and you're just spiritually waking up maybe, or you haven't quite yet, but you're interested in finding out how to go about it. The contrast of who you are to who you can become is massive. So if you're someone, and I want to share with you, I was very, very broken. I had been brought up in a family where there was a lot of physical abuse, a lot of neglect, a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of brokenness. And that meant I felt very incapable. My mum had brought me up to not believe in myself. So I would see things and she would say, no, 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 you didn't see that. This is what happened. And she would tell me what I was supposed to have seen. And some of the things was, you won't treat me like the boys do, will you? Right? So I literally came out of my family at 16, not knowing. I left home. Dad died when I was 15, and I left home when I was 16. And I had no idea how this planet worked. I felt very isolated. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like an alien. And I could not speak up for my truth because I didn't know what my truth was. I had no idea because everyone had always told me what I should think and how I should behave. And so I just followed suit, right? I served. I constantly looked after people from a very young age. My dad was, because he was sick and my mum was working at 12 years old, I was shopping and cooking and cleaning for the house, right? And so I was very responsible from a very young age. So there was no strong, empowered, confident who you see me as right now. I was very broken. I had no concept of what my own truth was, no boundaries, no voice. So leaving my first relationship with 2 kids in tow, man, that was so hard and so challenging. And so I wanted to share that because I know it's really important. If you are in that position right now, if you find yourself in, you see yourself as broken, you feel unworthy, you don't feel like you belong, all of the things, you're not good enough, know that there is more for you. I am no one special. And so many people, you hear the stories all the time of people that go through this process of discovering themselves and becoming really strong, empowered people. And you are no different. I really want you to know that. You are here at this time listening to this information for a reason. Your spirit brought you here. If you're still listening to me, then there is a reason. Your spirit got you to come here so that you are getting this message from me. So yeah, here I was, 2 kids in tow, 23 years old, had no idea what I was going to do. I'll share some little bits in between afterwards. But what happened was, in that first year of leaving my partner, I did more in that 1 year than I had done in the 10 years. So I got rid of all my debt. I bought a car and got my license for the first time. I got qualified as a remedial massage therapist. So I did a 12-month diploma in remedial massage. I bought a bed for me and the kids. I moved in with his mum, right? So, because I was too scared to live by myself and didn't know if I could cope. And so I moved in with his mum in the country, and bought a car, bought, a bed. We all slept in the one room. I had a bed that had the double bed at the bottom and the single at the top. You had to, like a double decker bed. I can't remember what they're called, but it was a really cool bed. They were only new back then. And yeah, got myself a remedial massage therapy certificate, diploma. And for 12 months I was living in the country, and then the kids were missing him and I was missing them. Sorry, he was missing the kids, they were missing him, and he was living up in far north Queensland, in the Cairns area, for all my Australians. And basically I moved up. That's another big story as well. So I moved up to far north Queensland, and I think it was maybe about 12 months later. So I think it was about 12 months later, because I was in the first house. Yeah, it was about 12 months later. Someone kept on hassling me to go and see this psychic. Now, I didn't believe in psychics. I thought they were charlatans. She just wants to take my money. She's going to tell me some sort of crap, blah, blah, blah. So I really didn't want to go. But this woman kept on insisting, you should go and see this woman. She's amazing. You get to speak to your dad, all the things. And so I finally went and did it just to shut this woman up. Right? Like, I'm going to go just to shut her up. So I book in the appointment and I go to this woman and it's in her house and I walk in and she puts me in, knock on the door, puts me in this little room and off she goes. And, I'm in there for about 5 minutes. She walks back in and she goes, "So what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, I'm in the wrong house," right? I'm like, "Oh, I'm here for a reading, I think." And she said, "Oh, well, you can do what I do, but obviously you don't know it." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go. This is the start of her trying to scam me, right?" Well, lo and behold, she starts telling me all this stuff, and she works out that my dad's in the room and that he had passed, and starts telling me all this stuff about my dad and my son, which that's a whole different story. In fact, he doesn't even want me to share that on the journey because he had a lot of amazing experiences and what supported me to go through and wake up, actually, some of the stuff my son used to talk about and doesn't believe in anymore. So anyway, I'm writing this stuff down and I feel this touch on my cheek just there. It was just there. It was the first touch of spirit. And I looked up and she said, "Oh, did you feel that?" I'm like, "Yeah, what was that?" And she said, "That's your dad. He wants you to really take note of what I'm saying, what he's saying, right? It's really important." So I'm like, "Oh, I can feel him. Like, can I touch him on my hand?" And I have that ghost moment, right? I put my hand out and he had been gone for so long that he was just a ball of energy and he came over my hand and it was really, really beautiful. So when I go home, 3 days of things like touching me. I'm turning around and there's nothing there. And it's like happening all the time. It's totally freaking me out, right? Don't believe in any of it, right? So I ring her back and say, "What's going on? There's these things touching me and there's nothing there. And, this is freaking me out." And she goes, "It's okay. They're all happy that you've woken up and it will settle down." So I'm like, "Well, can I come and see you again? Let me book in." And she said, "No." I'm like, "What? The charlatan doesn't want my money?" I just couldn't believe it, right? Now I understand that she was true and genuine and a real psychic because she knew that I needed to go on this journey by myself and that I didn't need a crutch. So what do you do when you spiritually wake up? You've got weird things happening, like, people touching you or things touching you and there's no one there and no one in your life that actually believes in it. None of my friends, I didn't even know many people up in Queensland. What do you do, right? So I went, okay, I'm going to find a meditation center or something. So I went and found a meditation center and started going to this meditation center. And through that process, I met this guy called Wayne that was right into all of this stuff, right? He had done a lot of work in anthropology. So he had learnt a lot of information. And he told me that I was a healer and that I came from the Nefertiti line. So if you look at the images of Cleopatra and Nefertiti, you'll see that Cleopatra was quite tall and she had broad shoulders or wide shoulders and thin arms and legs and more like a very masculine, not hips, boyish sort of figure. But Nefertiti had the long neck, small hands and feet, and the curvy, waist and hips, which is me. And so he was telling me that I'm a healer because he could tell by my body structure, which was very interesting. I had some really interesting experiences with him, and I will share that in another episode, because that led me to, from him, I went to a workshop with him that I didn't believe in. I thought it was way too out of my pay grade, like I've got no idea what this workshop's about. But I go to this workshop and the woman says, I've been waiting for someone and the person's you. And that woman ended up being my mentor for 7 years. And I did 7 years of past life regression training, which was very intense. I'm talking nearly every single weekend. And if it wasn't weekends, it was during the week, where I was part of her book. And that's where a lot of my spiritual development started, because it was stripping parts of me off that I didn't need anymore for this journey as this soul, as Elizabeth, this time around. So I'm going to share that a little bit more in other episodes, and start sharing, some of these amazing experiences I had as a past life therapist. Because what I did was, I started with her, and then I became a facilitator. There was only 5 of us in the little mini group, and I was the only one that actually started doing past life regression training, facilitation. And yeah, that was a very interesting experience. So I want to share some of the sessions and the stories that I went through. And really, it's taking all the layers off that that we come down into the planet with, because the things that you're going through right now may not just be from this life. They could be from past lives, and they could also be within your DNA, through generational history that you're holding on to, the baggage of your parents, right? Where we are in consciousness, is those things are coming to the, bubbling up to the surface to be cleared, so that we can really spread our wings and start really elevating into the 5th dimension. So that's me. That's my story to start with. I would love for you to share in the comments what you take away from that, where you're at in your journey. I would love to go on this journey with you. And, if you want to follow along, that would be awesome. I'd love to get to know people through this process as I'm going through this journey. I am on Facebook. If you're interested in following me on Facebook, Elizabeth Eleanor. Eleanor is a little bit different. It's Elenor. And my Facebook group name at the moment, so anything can change at any time, is Awakening Magical Women Choosing Conscious Relationships. So if you would like to follow us on that Facebook group, then please jump in and check it out. And also, I'll put all the links downstairs. I'll put all the links down into the comments as well. If you want to follow along, please subscribe and hit the bell. I don't even know what the bell means, but that means that's something that I hear other people say. Hit the subscribe and the bell. I think the bell tells you about notifications. So do that if that's going to rock your boat. And yeah, my biz page on Facebook is Peacemaker Ascension Portal, because that's another story altogether, how I ended up with the name called Make Peace. But that's for another time. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.